Welcome to another episode of the Super Flexology Start Sit series. I am your host, John Bauer. You can find me on Twitter at The Bauer Club. And tonight, we are here with the three-man band while Mitch is out in Disney. I am joined by Jordan Lindsay, and that's at Jailbreak Screen on Twitter. What's going on, Jordan?
I think I may have screwed over Mark Walton. I picked him as that under 6K play, and then I guess he got drug tested because of that, and then he failed, and now he's suspended. So that's my bad all around, I guess. But yeah, last week wasn't great, but happy to be back.
I was laughing. I mean, it's not funny that he failed the drug test and he got suspended for 4 games. But once again, and Mitch and I, we've talked about this so many times, there is a super flexology curse. And Jordan, last week, you put the hex on Mark Walton. So thank you for that. And then also dropping by is Dan Lamagna, and that is at LC_Dean on Twitter. What's going on, Dan?
Hey, 6 teams on a bye, John. I'm ready to sort this all out tonight for us. And as far as the Mark Walton curse, I think it's even worse because it wasn't that he was drug tested, Jordan. This is old business from, I think, the offseason that they finally penalized him for.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember he did get arrested for, I think it was possession or something.
Yeah, multiple arrests in weeks. It was bad. He was a hot mess.
Well, the suspension should have happened prior to last week's show, so then Jordan would not have been tempted to pick him, and maybe you would have gotten the point there. But we'll move on here. So looking at the season-long scoring recap, and he's not joining us tonight, but still in the lead is Mitch with 26. Dan, you're creeping up with 24 points. I passed Jordan once again. We'll keep flipping and flopping as the season goes on. I have 21. Jordan, you're right behind me with 20. As we always do, let's have a quick run through from last week's start-sit decisions. The hits on our starts and sits, we weren't too good on the starts, guys. I did get the point on Jordan Howard, but then for the sits, we got Royce Freeman, Sony Michel, Austin Eckler, Chris Carson. So those were all the sits compared to the consensus Fantasy Pros rankings. So there we were 4 for 4. And then some of our misses, Dan, you got to stop picking Bears. Mitch Trubisky, and then Mark Ingram and Danny Amendola. I really thought this was going to be a big day for Amendola, and it was not. So those are the big misses for the start sits. Week 10 is upon us, guys. It's getting down to the nitty-gritty. The regular season is wrapping up. So looking at Week 10, starts versus the consensus Fantasy Pros rankings. Dan, let's start with you. Who do you have?
Okay, I'm going to take your advice, JB. I am not touching any Chicago Bears. I vote that Mitch Trubisky is impeached and Chase Daniels the new starter, but I'm staying away from the Bears. So I'm with you there. Start of the week. All right, time to get back on track here with the starts. I'm going to go with running back here. I'm going with Rojo, lucky number 27, my old football jersey number. He has been given the blessing by Coach Arians. The Bucs fans chiming in. Okay, hear me out here. They are playing the Arizona Cardinals, guys. It is a dream matchup versus the Cardinals this week. Vegas loves this game. It's going to be an explosive one. Both teams are going to be scoring. Tampa Bay's passing game is going to be, lighten things up. And I think it's going to open it up for Ronald Jones. Last week, 18 carries, 67 yards and a touchdown, 2 receptions, 15 yards. He had 16 DraftKings points. Guys, I'm predicting he has at least 100 total yards and maybe his first 100-game rushing on the year.
It does bode well. And, we talk about coaches coming out and saying things. Was it coach speak or is it actually going to come to fruition? The one concern that I have, and it's based on games that we've seen up to this point for the Arizona Cardinals, it seemed like they've made a very big effort to stop the run, but that was against teams like Baltimore early in the season when they may have wanted them to be challenged through the air as opposed to the running game. But you look at this game against Tampa Bay, I don't see a way that they would really focus against the run. You would think that they'd want to stop the passing game. So Rojo might actually be a solid pick here. But of course, Jordan chimed in. We heard him grunt over there. We heard him grumble. Jordan, what are your thoughts here with Rojo beating running back 27?
Oh, he's going to do it. I was just shocked. I mean, yeah, that's a lock. I think Rojo is going to crush it. It's just crazy that after all this time that, people are starting to finally lighten up on Rojo. It makes me happy. That's all it was. No, I'm happy. I can't wait for the game. I'm obviously going. It's going to be a fun one. And, Rojo looked great, and he's been looking good all year. And, I think Bruce is finally committing to him. It took him a minute for him to commit to David Johnson when he was a rookie. And I think Rojo's finally showing that he can do it all in the running game and in the passing game as well.
Yeah, a lot of the issues, obviously, it's what we saw last year. And Jordan, do you have season tickets for the Bucs?
Yeah, I do.
Have they won a game that you've been to, or are you just that bad luck?
Oh, this year? No, not yet. There's only been 2 games because we haven't. There hasn't been one since September 22nd.
Okay.
We lost one because of the London game.
Ah, that's right. Okay. Well, hopefully you guys turn it around and you are good luck moving forward. And Ronald Jones delivers on Dan's pick here to beat running back 27. Jordan.
John, real quick, just to clarify, the 27 was my old high school football number. I'm having an Al Bundy moment. He's technically ranked 22nd. I just said he was my lucky number 27. But he's still, regardless, going to break and do better than that 22nd ranking.
Oh, okay, perfect. I'm waiting for you to scream like you say Al Bundy. What is it? Polk High football rules or whatever he said?
Yeah, I'm living a little bit in the past there with Al Bundy and Polk High and my old football number. But, hey, Rojo's repping the 27, and this week he's going to rank a good ranking.
All right, so he will beat running back 22. My apologies. I didn't want to shortchange him there. Jordan, over to you. Who do you have? Who is your Week 10 start versus the consensus Fantasy Pros ranking?
I'm actually going to stay in the fire with that game. I'm going to go with Christian Kirk. Obviously, Tampa Bay has the league's worst passing defense, and we've seen plenty of instances where multiple receivers can be relevant. So I think this could be a Keyshawn Johnson game as well. I think it could be an everybody game, but Christian Kirk is a wide receiver 20 this year. And like Dan said, it's like Vegas loves it. I got a 52 over under when I saw it. Not sure what it's at right now. And Tampa Bay bottles up the run. So Kyler's going to have to pass the ball, and that's where Tampa gets beat. So I think Christian Kirk's going to crush wide receiver 20, maybe potentially get a top 10.
Well, you're in good company here because I have Mitch's right-in answers, and he also went with Christian Kirk in that game, which, again, I think you mentioned the over-under being 52 or somewhere around there. It's expected to be a very high-scoring game, and for fantasy purposes, I really hope it delivers. So over to my guy, and it's a wide receiver. He's coming in at wide receiver 31. It's Jamison Crowder against the New York Giants, and it looks like, based on the PFF matchups, the cornerback wide receiver matchups, he might be matched up against Corey Ballentine. This is an A-plus matchup for him, guys. Ballentine was absolutely lost last week. He gave up the big touchdown to your boy, Amari Cooper, Dan. He didn't look good out there. I saw there was some commentary. The defense, I guess they were in zone coverage, and he was matched up in man and just got beat. You know, they weren't on the same page. And this bodes very well for a struggling Jets offense. And last week, we saw Jamison Crowder reestablish himself as Sam Darnold's go-to wide receiver, especially if Le'Veon Bell misses this game. Dan, you and I talked about this murky running back situation before we jumped on the air. If Le'Veon Bell misses this game, that's going to open things up for Jamison Crowder in the short passing game. And I love the matchup. This Giants defense, they've been an absolute disaster. And I think it continues. And I actually think the New York Jets have a pretty good game from an offensive fantasy perspective this week against the Giants. What are you guys' thoughts there on Jamison Crowder?
I'll hop in on this one, and everything I'm studying so far this week, John, is pointing to Crowder. So I think you're definitely onto something there. And it just hit me as you were talking about our starts of the week. You know, I think between Mitch, Jordan, and myself, we're saying start all the Bucs, start all the Cardinals. You're onto something with Crowder. But, John, please be careful this week. The reason we did bad start of the week, remember that, Hex? You locked us in for getting every start of the week right last week. So please do not say anything.
I thought about that. We went 1 for 4, and I didn't make that promise for the sits. And there we went 4 for 4. So I promise you guys, I will not make that guarantee for our starts this week. I'll say they might be okay. Maybe that'll work for us, guys.
Amen.
All right, so Christian Kirk, Ronald Jones, Jamison Crowder, those are the guys that we're looking at in Week 10 that we like to beat their Fantasy Pros consensus rankings. Now let's go over to the sits. So these are the guys, obviously, we're kind of staying away from if we have better options, and we do not believe they are going to beat their Fantasy Pros consensus rankings. I'm going to throw Mitch's answer out there very quickly. Aaron Jones at running back 6. Even though it looks to be a good matchup, Mitch still doesn't like it. Dan, you know from group chats, same with you, Jordan. I think Mitch knocks Aaron Jones every chance he gets, and he's continuing it with it here going into Week 10. So Aaron Jones at running back 6. Mitch has that as his sit. Jordan, over to you. Your Week 10 sit versus the consensus rankings.
This is actually a game. This is like the opposite of the Arizona-Tampa game. This is the Cleveland-Buffalo game. I want nothing to do with this game at all. That being said, first game back for Kareem Hunt. So coming in at RB7 is Nick Chubb. I hate it. I think he's going to fall well below that. And this goes against all my laurels. Every time you say, I'm going to sit Nick Chubb, I'm like, oh man, he still did it.
You've yelled at me about this too.
I have, and I'm actually going to go with it now. I think it's going to be a super low scoring game. I think Kareem Hunt's going to really eat into Chubb's touches. I mean, if he takes away 6 to 8 touches, that leaves Chubb with what, like 12 to 15, which is pretty significant. So at RB7, I just can't have that.
Dan, I'm going to leapfrog you here because I'm actually sticking with the same game. I know I picked on him last week when we talked about our over $6,000 fades, but I'm going back to Odell Beckham Jr. They have him ranked at wide receiver 15. He has not seen the end zone since September 16th. That black cat from Monday Night Football, he has found the end zone more often than Odell Beckham has this season. I've been getting that joke revved up for a while. So yeah. Oh, come on. But, he has a tough matchup against Tre'Davious White this week for the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to keep moving on there, even after being booed. But he has a very tough matchup against Tre'Davious White. He had a tough matchup last week against Chris Harris. And Dan, you and I talked about that. And he did not perform the way that I think many people had hoped. He underperformed last week. And he's going to underperform again this week. This defense, they've done a really good job against opposing wide receivers, and I'm talking about the Buffalo Bills. Tre'Davious White, he's had 39 targets against him in 8 games, only 23 receptions, 287 yards against all season, 0 touchdowns. I feel very confident that Odell Beckham, not only is he not going to be wide receiver 15, he's not going to find the end zone. I think Tre'Davious White, he's going to have at least 1 interception because Baker Mayfield has been absolutely atrocious. I don't even know if Beckham's going to be a low-end wide receiver 2. I would be surprised to see him coming in as a wide receiver 3 this week. So as much as I like Jamison Crowder and I dislike Odell Beckham this week, I'm making a guarantee, even though, Dan, I know I should be making these guarantees because they don't usually come to fruition, but this week it's going to. Jamison Crowder is going to outscore Odell Beckham in PPR formats this week.
All right.
I can see that.
All right.
I can see that.
So I don't think it's an extremely hot take.
No,
but it might be a little bit warm. It might be warm.
It's warm. It's warm, but it's not. It's not hot.
I'm starting Jamison Crowder in leagues, and I'm excited about it. And I think to Jordan's point, I'm not excited about this Browns-Bills game. You note the lockdown matchup on Beckham, and the Browns are just dysfunctional right now. Baker's shaving his beard, goatee, whatever he did 3 times before, during, after the game. The Browns are dysfunctional, so I'm with you there.
He can't even figure out what type of facial hair he wants. How's he going to lead this team to a victory? That's my question.
He is cracking.
I know. All right, Dan, are you going to do another game, or are you sticking with the Bills-Browns as well?
I'm bailing on you guys here. All right. They said, JB, I could see the OBJ hate there. Aaron Jones and Chubb, I'm going to be fans of them this week. I'm going to hope they're matchup proof so I could, continue to gain on Mitch and keep Jordan at bay. But I am going to stay on the running back theme and go with Dalvin Cook. Hang in there, slow down. All right. I am not telling people to bench Dalvin Cook.
I might have to boot you off the show for this one, Dan.
I'm playing with fire here. I am playing with fire here for sure. But I've got rationale, John. You know that.
All right, let's hear it.
I'm going based on him being ranked 3rd. I understand he's a stud pick. He will finish at least 4 slots lower than RB3 in the Fantasy Pro rankings this week. He is going on the road to play my Dallas Cowboys, who I just watched live and in person there in New Jersey against the Giants, and watched Dallas contain Saquon Barkley to a mere 15.5 DraftKings points. Adam Thielen is out this week. Dallas is going to key in the run. They have a really good run defense they're a team that just tackles very well. I'm not saying Dalvin's not going to score points. I'm not saying you sit him in your redraft leagues. But if you're deciding between him and another stud back, or when we get to DFS later, on the road versus Dallas, he is not going to be a top 3, top 5 ranked back this week.
It's going to be very interesting to see because Dalvin Cook obviously ranked very highly, and for a reason. He's been extremely productive this season. So that running back 3 number, it might be a stretch. But yeah, I'm very interested to see how he looks this week against your Dallas Cowboys. So, Jordan, did you have anything there on Dalvin Cook?
Yeah, I'm just going to say he's going to finish at like RB6. Just so Dan can't get the point. Like he's
only 3 spots below.
I'm telling you, that's exactly what's going to happen.
All right, so Mitch, Jordan, Dan, you all threw high-profile, highly ranked running backs out there. Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb. So while we say sits, again, they're sits versus consensus rankings, maybe not necessarily an actual sit, especially if you don't have better options, and most likely you're not going to have better options. But I'm throwing Odell Beckham out there. I don't even see him finishing as a wide receiver 2 this week. Moving on here, the DFS stuff, guys. Week 10, it is upon us. I want to talk about our misses. And Jordan, there was a big miss that I have to call out. And Dan, you were making fun of me. Dan, you were making fun of me last week because I brought up the Mellow Cup. We were talking about candy, trick-or-treating, Halloween, and I said maybe Mike Evans was going to be like a Mellow Cup. You reach into your bag because it had the similar feel to a Reese's Cup. Well, I'm going to tell you, he was like a king-size Reese's Cup. That's how fantastic he was last week. Jordan, Mike Evans, he blew up.
He was the biggest Reese's Cup of all time. I mean, it was it's like they just like it was like someone just left a bowl of candy in front of their door and said, "Here, help yourself." You just take the whole bowl and you're just like, "Here, take all the fantasy points," and then that's all the Reese's. So you get the entire bag. So that was it. So
he did take all the fantasy points.
That was great. That was great.
And then we got to talk about Mark Walton, because not only was he a bust last week, but he got busted, and he's out for the next 4 weeks. So, that was an easy segue there.
Listen, I was really sick last week, so I mean, let's just chalk it up on that.
That's fine. You're feeling better now. The takes, they're going to be strong this week. All of the under 4K dart throws. Again, we do this early in the week. It's tough because not all the situations are set in stone. All the 4K dart throws were garbage, except, and I'm going to transition into the DFS hits, Rashad Perryman. And Dan, again, I tweeted this. I don't think I would be shocked if a lot of people were talking about Rashad Perryman. And yes, he got a little bit of help because of that crazy touchdown. But Rashad Perryman, that was a great play and great pick. And besides the touchdown, he saw the targets. So Dan, you had your crystal ball working last week. That was a fantastic pick.
Rashad Perryman and Zach Ertz, my under 6K, both went off last week. So I'm here like smiling from ear to ear. And those boys won me some DFS cash. And guys, Rashad Perryman, he is dart throw relevant.
And don't worry, I know you mentioned Ertz. You don't want to leave him out, but I'm going to get to him. The other hits, we had Odell Beckham as a fade, Zach Ertz as a play. I want to bring up Derek Carr because while that was a hit, I did not give myself credit for the point because last week I had a little bit too much swagger, a little too much confidence, and I guaranteed that he was going to at least get 4 times the return on his price. And I think he was like 3.5. So he just missed it. Still over the 3, but not quite the 4 that I guaranteed. So I didn't give myself the point. Don't worry. But then DK Metcalf, Mitch had DK, and he had a fantastic game last week. So let's get right into it. The over $6,000 fades. Dan, let's start with you. Who are you bringing to the table?
All right, I'm going to give you an assist here, John, because I'm sticking with your advice, and I'm not going with the Bears. I'm going against the Bears. And Mr. Allen Robinson, who I love, he's on my dynasty team. I think he's an incredible receiver, but at 6,300, I am telling everybody to sit in DFS Allen Robinson. He had a mere 6 yards receiving versus the Eagles secondary, who's been toasted this year. Now they are getting a little bit better. They've got some guys healthier, but I don't think they're that much better. And now he goes up to versus Detroit and has to be covered by Darius Slay. I have no confidence in starting any Bears, not even Allen Robinson here. So at 6,300, there are so many better plays. Find guys in that Bucks Cards game. Stay away from Allen Robinson.
Like I said earlier, I want nothing to do with anybody involved in this passing game, and I have to specify passing game, and you'll find out here in about 5 minutes or so. But Jordan, over to you. Who is your over $6,000 fade?
What do they call the definition of insanity? I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go right back to it. Mike Evans, 7,600. I'm going to sit him. I'm just going to do it again. I think Patrick Peterson's back, and I think it's going to be a Godwin game, and I'm just going to stick to it and hope for the best, man.
I feel like we recorded last week's episode. I took a sound bite from last week's take and just threw it right back in there. So Mike Evans, $7,600, fading him. I kind of agree with you in terms of the Godwin game. I do think he's going to get back on track. Last 2 weeks, little subpar based on what we've seen in the past and what we've come to expect. But I could see Mike Evans. I put together an early week lineup and I have him in one of them. He's just been absolutely incredible.
Jordan, I got to stop you, man. Yeah, I'm starting to think that Mitch, John, and I have to sit in a room and have an intervention with you as a Bucks fan because I think you are tilting with these tough losses your team is having. Do not sit any Bucks Cardinals at all in that game whatsoever, even if it's a Godwin game. And we do make a point. We know Godwin's due to go off in a game and have a better game than Evans, but I think they're both eating this week. I think you're just struggling with that 2-6 record right now, and it's impacting your decisions regarding the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Well, we'll see. So we have Allen Robinson, 6,300, Mike Evans, 7,600, maybe a little too steep for Jordan. And then Mitch came in, another wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, at $7,700. That's who he's fading. And I'm going to go against the grain a little bit here and go with a running back. Coming in at running back 13, Todd Gurley. He's $6,100. And I wanted to mix it up a little bit. And I know we picked on Todd Gurley in the past, but I'm going back to it. I hate to recycle the players that we've gone through, but this isn't a good matchup for him. And it's not the matchup that owners are looking for. I picked on my Pittsburgh Steelers defense so many times to start the season. They've righted the ship a bit, and they haven't looked that bad. I know Mitch was it last week. He said they might be good. I'm not saying they're good, but I'm going to say they're not that bad. But this offense isn't clicking in Los Angeles. Todd Gurley hasn't topped 60 yards in almost 2 months. Of course, he has that touchdown upside that we've grown to love, and that's what gives Todd Gurley his value. But the Steelers have only given up 4 rushing touchdowns all year. You look at Todd Gurley. In week 5, 93% snap share. They had a bye week in week 6. His snap share has been down to 61% and 52%, with Henderson getting more involved in that offense. I go back to the adjusted line yards that we've talked about previously on the show. Pittsburgh is a top 7 defense in that category. I hate this matchup and the direction the Rams team is going. I'm staying far away from Todd Gurley in DFS, especially at $6,100. Any thoughts there on that, guys?
Anytime I think you're traveling to Pittsburgh, John, and this could just be, past history bias, those years of the Steel Curtain, and they've had some great defenses and do some magical things in Pittsburgh. Unless it's one of those explosive offenses where you have those, Patriots Steelers shootouts. But I think it's that kind of game where the Pittsburgh defense is scary, and I wouldn't have any confidence starting Gurley there.
You talk about teams coming to Pittsburgh, especially West Coast teams. I saw the number, and if you guys saw it, please correct me if this is incorrect. But I think it's like over the last 18 games against West Coast teams coming to Pittsburgh, the Steelers are like 14-4. And we know it's tough whenever these teams have to travel multiple time zones on the road. But yeah, Todd Gurley, he's just, I haven't liked what I've seen, especially with the reduced snap share, somebody that I'm avoiding. Now we look at the guys that we like, under $6,000 plays. Jordan, we're starting with you this time. Who do you have?
So I'm going to go with the Colts-Dolphins game. And
don't pick another Dolphins running back, please, for the love of God.
See, I'm not going to be that crazy this week. I'm already being too crazy with the Mike Evans thing. So if they weren't playing the Dolphins, I probably wouldn't do this. But simply out of necessity, Zach Pascal is the number 1 receiver for the Colts right now. And, whenever he's gotten an opportunity, he's always produced. And T.Y.'s out. Campbell's out for the foreseeable future, and he just steps in and he produces. And like I said, if this was any other team, if he was facing any other team with a better defensive secondary, then I wouldn't do it. But they don't have Xavier Howard, they don't have anybody, and he's going to be the number 1 target. And regardless of who plays quarterback, I think he's going to be able to produce at 5,300.
It's funny that you mentioned him. There's been a lot of talk on Twitter and even in different leagues I'm in. And in one dynasty league earlier today, he actually got moved for a 2020 second. So that tells you how much his value has spiked over the last few weeks. Could you have imagined prior to the season that him getting moved for a 2020 second?
I wouldn't do it today.
No, I absolutely wouldn't do it today. No.
I would certainly take it, though. I have a couple shares. Shoot.
But to even be in the conversation.
Oh, no. That's insane. You probably couldn't have got a 4th for him 2 weeks ago.
Right. And now he's coming out as the number 1 receiver, where it looks like Jacoby Brissett should be back. I think he at least had a limited practice today as of Wednesday. So if he plays, even if Hoyer plays, I think Pascal could be a really good play at 5,300. Like you said, out of necessity. Dan, before we get to Mitch's pick, we're going to go with you. Mitch and I actually have the same guy here.
Fair enough. Now, I might be bending the rules here a little bit, John. I think you guys will allow it. Under 4K plays, we say no tight ends, but under 6K play, I don't want this guy to be my under 4K play, and I feel the necessity to take him and mention him on this show because I want to bring him back to life. I think everybody should have him on their roster. I think this is his return to fantasy relevance coming out party. O.J. Howard, start all the Bucks, start all the Cardinals at 3,300. He said he's good to go. He's ready to play. Cameron Brate is dinged up. I believe in the eye test. I watch all these games every Sunday. And before his hamstring injury, O.J. Howard was getting open. He looked good. He looked like that top 5 tight end we thought he was going to be. And in Winston, that offense is opening up. I think O.J. Howard is going to smash this week, just like Zach Ertz did last week. So under 6K play, I'm going way down at 3,300, OJ Howard.
I'm going to allow it, and I'm going to tell you why. I also agree there. Again, I did my early week lineup, seeing where everybody was priced. I love OJ Howard this week. That Arizona defense, not only is it bad in general, it is very bad against the tight end. And I think they've given up the most fantasy points to tight ends in the entire NFL, if I'm correct there.
Oh, it's been winning me DFS
correct.
money week in and week out, or if I've had a bad lineup, my tight end's been good when going against the Cardinals. This is the week, the matchup, and I think he's going to play well the rest of the year.
He's either going to get you 0 points or he's going to go off for like 25 and be an absolutely incredible return. So like I said, I have him in my early week lineup as of now. So I like that, Dan. Mitch and I, we do have the same pick here. And I said, I don't want to go with anybody in the passing game for the Bears, but David Montgomery at $5,300. And I know, Dan, I ripped on you for going with the Bears, and I've made comments in the past. They're going against that Lions defense. They've been absolutely horrendous. I picked on this defense last week when I went with Derek Carr. They've given up a 100-yard rusher in 3 of their last 4 games. And it's funny because the only running back that didn't crack 100 yards in that stretch was Saquon Barkley. David Montgomery is getting more involved in that offense. Mike Davis has been completely phased out. David Montgomery has become the only somewhat reliable piece to this offense. He's been able to find the end zone recently, and this is going to continue against that porous Detroit run defense. I just love this matchup. And again, we've talked about adjusted line yards before. This Detroit defense, they rank bottom 4, only ahead of Green Bay, Miami, and Kansas City. It's a dream matchup for a young running back where Mitchell Trubisky, apparently he doesn't want the TVs turned on at their facilities because people keep picking on him. Poor Mitchell. As a result, they're going to rely on that running game, and this offense, it has to go through him. So what are you guys' thoughts there? I know we've talked about the Bears and stay away, but David Montgomery, this seems like a great value to me this week.
Oh, yes. So David Montgomery is actually my runner-up on start of the week as well as under 6K play. So Detroit is getting the most fantasy points to running backs, firstly. And like you said, he's getting the lion's share of the work now. He's the only consistent part they have, and he's leading the league in carries inside the 5-yard line. So, yes, 100%.
Just a recipe for success this week. I almost want to make the guarantee that he'll have at least 4 times on his price, but I'm just going to stick with the 3.
No.
I'm just going to stick with the 3. I don't want to get the super flexology hex there. So, okay.
Don't do it. Please don't do it.
No, I will not do it for the sake of his success this week. So David Montgomery, Pascal, Howard, those are under $6,000 plays that we love going into week 10. Now, guys, let's talk about our under $4,000 dart throw. We haven't had too much success, but Dan, we're going to start with you because you're the reigning bottom of the ocean depth person here by picking Brashad Perryman last week. So start us off on the right foot. Who do you have?
I appreciate that. And there's the old saying that says, do not fix what is not broke. And Brashad Perryman is not broke except for in the DraftKings price scale, because for some reason they did not adjust it. They left him at $3,000. I'm going all the way back down to my main man, Brashad Perryman again.
Yes.
And he will earn a touchdown. Never mind the fluke one he got last week, because not only did he get that touchdown, but he had a handful of catches. He had a handful of targets. There were some that were incomplete. He is a factor in that offense, as crazy as it sounds. My only apprehension is OJ Howard's going to be eating a little bit this week, so there has to be enough balls to go around. But that fast-paced Arizona offense, a very high-scoring game. Perryman's relevant again, and he is my lock and load under 4K play.
If they're not going to adjust the price, go back to the well. I don't mind that. Jordan, over to you. Who's your under $4,000 shot in the dark?
I mean, if I'm saying it's a Godwin game and you're saying it's a Rojo game and a Howard game, so that means it can't be a Mike Evans game too, right? So, like, I'm not that crazy. No, anyway. So I'm kind of wavering here, but I'm actually going to, God, I can't do it. I'm going to go with Josh Reynolds at 3,900, just filling in for Brandon Cooks. And, similar to Pascal, he whenever he gets an opportunity, he almost always produces. I love the talent. He just never gets the opportunity just simply based off who's ahead of him. But, the Steelers D is tough, but he's probably going to draw the weakest matchup. So if anyone could get open and possibly score once or twice, we've seen Josh Reynolds score twice, at least 1, 2, 3, maybe 3 times. But I like Josh Reynolds as a player, and I'd like him at 3,900.
You're not crazy. And for Mitch's pick, and this is the commentary he provided, he said this is going to be very chalky if Cooks is out. He also went with Josh Reynolds, so you guys are on the same page there. Dan, Brashad Perryman, Mitch and Jordan, Josh Reynolds. I'm going with an Atlanta Falcon whose target share increased significantly prior to the bye week with the departure of Mohamed Sanu. That's Russell Gage.
Yep.
They're coming off a bye week. Matt Ryan's back. They're going against the Saints offense that is that team is a 13-point favorite against the Falcons. They're going to put up a lot of points. High over under, it's 52. I think the Saints score early and often. As a result, the Falcons are going to have to throw the ball a lot. I would be very surprised if Matt Ryan doesn't at least have 40 pass attempts. That gives Russell Gage a chance to be relevant in this game. He saw 27 snaps out of the slot against the Seahawks the week prior to their bye week. That was the fifth most snaps out of the slot by any wide receiver in the NFL in week 8. $3,400 price tag in a high scoring game where the Falcons are going to have to throw. I'm going to gobble that up all day. And again, when I looked at my early week lineups here and I'm moving pieces around, there were some spots where I jammed in maybe a Mike Evans or Michael Thomas, and I had to go really cheap for a wide receiver option. Russell Gage was that guy for me. But Dan, I might have to look at Brashad Perryman, but I might tinker a little bit here.
Hey, I might tinker as well now and look at a little bit of Russell Gage, John, because that's a good deep study on your end there. And it's not flukish. He was really liked by the Falcons in the preseason, had a good preseason. But then obviously there was that logjam at receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. And I think another point I would add is versus the Saints, Marshawn Lattimore has been playing lockdown this year, really having probably his best year. He's going to be covering Julio. So if he takes away just a little bit from Julio, that ball has to go somewhere, and it could be Gage in the slot.
Yeah, he's probably going to have Eli Apple if he's healthy, right? So, I mean, that's a recipe for great things.
I hope so. Again, $3,400. And I need some points. Jordan, you and we got to start creeping up on Dan and Mitch. Their heads have been getting too big. They're walking around, puffing their chests out. We can't allow this.
Oh, no. I've had enough.
Mitch even said, I can take the week off because I'm so far ahead of you guys. I had to make him give me his write-in picks. No, I kid about that. But okay, guys, week 10, it's upon us. Final thoughts. Dan, what do you have for the listeners?
Well, I'm going to be catching Mitch because he's hanging out with Mickey Mouse right now. He's probably let his guard down, only 2 points behind. And hopefully all this momentum is going to carry me into these DraftKings contests this week. So my I guess, tip for the listeners is a little bit different. It's not really fantasy advice like past weeks, but this is the time of year where DraftKings gets really creative with some of their, big money contests. They have instead of their typical Million Maker, which is, normally $25 to get in or $10 to get in, they have a $100 contest this week for, it's a little bit rich for me here, but you know how addicted we are to fantasy, guys. And there's only 44,000 entries allowed into this contest for $1 million going to first. I will probably also play the $10 one for $300,000 to first. But guys, this is the week I'm winning the Million Maker because I don't have as much competition. It's just me versus 44,000 people representing our team here and setting up for our Vegas party.
Well, I can tell you that I have 2 entries in that already, and so I'm gonna let you have second, but I gotta take home the million.
I was gonna say you better be spreading that a little bit. Nothing crazy, but yeah, no, that sounds great.
Yeah, we'll have a huge party. It's gonna be fantastic. And Dan, if you win, you're gonna make sure everyone gets flown out, free airfare, hotels are gonna be covered by Dan, the man Lamagna. Jordan, final thoughts here, week 10.
Yeah, I mean, one game I'm really going to keep my eye on this weekend, as bad as it sounds, is the Bengals game because I am intrigued by Ryan Finley. He tested well. He doesn't have crazy arm strength, but I think he could, like Taylor and company, they drafted him, and I think he's had enough time to learn the system, and he's getting A.J. Green back, which is great things for Tyler Boyd as well. So if he can utilize those weapons, get Joe Mixon involved in the pass game, I mean – he could be very viable in a super flex league winner. So keep an eye on that Bengals game.
I was just going to say that, and especially deeper super flex leagues or 2 quarterback leagues. If somebody had somebody like a Gardner Minshew, I know it's a sore subject for you, Jordan. I gloated a little bit when he got benched.
No, that's okay.
But if you had a Gardner Minshew that just got benched for Nick Foles and you don't have Nick Foles and you might be down to 1 quarterback or you had some injuries, Ryan Finley, he's probably not available. I mean, he's definitely not available on the waiver wire anymore, but he might be a quarterback that you can get via trade for a very cheap price right now, but if you were able to stash him, he is going to be fantasy relevant from a super flex or 2-quarterback perspective. So I appreciate you bringing that up because I have several shares. He looked great in the preseason. I am very interested to see what he does. And he literally could be fighting for his job next year because if they're able to win a few games, you did a little mock draft, Jordan, and you had the Bengals taking 2 at number 1. Well, if they win a few games and they get bumped to maybe the 4 or 5 spot, 2 is not going to be an option.
And that's the beautiful thing about mock draft season. Everything can change. No, I had that exact thought. I was like, if Finley shows out, I'm changing this to a pick to like a Chase Young or something. But, absolutely. When I first came on the show, like 6 months ago, we were talking about, handcuffing quarterbacks. And we talked about Andy Dalton and Ryan Finley. And you know what? That's paying off right about now.
I remember that conversation. Do you remember who the other quarterback was that we said people should take a late round flyer on?
Mariota and Tannehill.
It was Ryan Tannehill, and that is paying off very nicely. He's had several starts already this season, and he's actually been moved in Superflex Dynasty leagues for a very reasonable return. So we talked about it several months ago, and it's more than relevant today. I have a final thought today, and it has to do with Evan Ingram. So he didn't practice today. Again, it's Wednesday. He's in the boot. He's out on Sunday. Jack Doyle is only owned in 40% of ESPN leagues. He's had at least 3 receptions in every single game since week 3. Paris Campbell out. T.Y. Hilton out. Jacoby Brissett probably back. Jack Doyle can exploit this Miami defense who's been susceptible to everybody, but also tight ends. He is a very viable option if you have to stream tight ends, and he's still out there as a free agent or on the waiver wire. Guys, as always, I appreciate you joining me. Mitch, he's out at Disney, but he will be back next week joining us for Week 11. Thank you for joining us in the Superflexology Start Sit series. Best of luck in Week 10, and have a great night.